Hey, what's going on, my Jets family? What's going on, everybody? I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for being here for as you've seen going on, our new editions of the Jets at Sunset, where we look out at the water. Got a nice, beautiful view here. Right, look out at the water, look out at the ferries coming in and stuff. They got one in the background. It's gonna be coming in as we're talking. But before we do get started, if I may show you, I I have a couple of dream boats that I absolutely love, and one of my favorite ones is actually docked right here, right now. I don't know if you guys can see it. It's a catamaran, which the beauty of this guy is it's a sailboat, but it has two ends on each side. So instead of having a solid hull, it's got like two wings. I don't know if you guys can see it. One of my favorites, absolutely beautiful boat, absolutely love it. But I want to thank you guys for tuning in. It's not what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about other stuff. But again, thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys for being part of the podcast. So if you can, if you haven't, if you could please subscribe to the channel, you can do so by clicking on the logo in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. That'd be very much appreciated. So the topic of conversation today, the topic we're going to be talking about is the topic of conversation that us Jet fans have been talking about for a long time, that we've been waiting for, we've been looking for, we've been hoping for, we've been waiting for. And one thing us Jet fans have been hoping for years, and it's really more than years. We think about it, it sucks to think about. It's really decades. For decades, we've been looking for quality presence on the edge, right? We've been looking for quality edge rushers, a quality edge rush in general, to draft these guys, right? Because that's what you do. That's how you build a winning team. Joe Douglas has shown us that, right? As we look at a beautiful view. Again, hope you guys are enjoying. Again, comment, any comments you want to bring, please bring them along. But Joe Douglas, building this team successfully, and we're getting to where you have to build through the draft. That's how it works. You can find edge rushers like Mr. Carl Lawson, and that's what we're going to talk about. So for a long time, we've been looking for quality edge rushers, right? If you guys remember the last time talking about draft, the last time we drafted a top of the draft edge rusher was Vernon Golson, and you guys all remember that. You guys all remember what happened there. That was a rough situation. Kid barely was able to play for a few games. Showed he wasn't anywhere near the NFL level, yet they took him sixth. And before that, it was John Abraham. We have, taken edge rushers in the third round, the fourth round, guys like Jonathan Jenkins, who was good for a little while, took a flyer on guys like Jachai Polite and other guys like that, and it didn't work out. But top edge rushers. You know what I'm talking about? The top edge rushers, the best guy in the draft, the guy that everyone's like, this is going to be, the Khalil Mack, the Von Miller of that draft. Like what we all wanted, we saw on Aiden Hutchinson, right? But one guy, as you guys remember, I really liked was Jermaine Johnson. And that kind of comes to the point of where we're going here. So as you guys know, for decades, for a long time, we've been looking for a quality edge rush, right? We've been hoping that the Jets are going to do something to figure it out, right? To figure out the edge rush. What the heck is the problem? Right? They can't draft the guys, right? Like we see them draft every other position, and we talked about this just a few years ago, right? That it wasn't rocket science, just before Joe Douglas was starting to turn it around, that the positions the Jets sucked the most in were the positions they hadn't drafted high, positions they'd missed high and hadn't taken players that high. So that was a major, that obviously when Joe Douglas comes in, he changes that. And that's kind of the point here. So like we said, for years, decades, we've been hoping for quality edge rushers. And as we know, you build your team through the draft. So we signed Carl Lawson, and we were all excited about him. You guys remember I had an episode not too long back, a little while back, on Carl Lawson. We talked about him just last week, and I'm excited about him, right? After he's come back from injury, he's come back better than he's been, stronger than he's been. He's ready to dominate. He's proven in 2019 and 2020, when he came back from his last injury, he dominated. He was great. So it's going to be exciting to have him back. But again, you build through the draft. That's what you do, right? Guys like Sauce Gardner. It's great to have guys like DJ Reed, and he's going to grow with the team too. But you want to draft these guys. You want to draft the blue chip, the top caliber player. And Jermaine Johnson, in my opinion, was one of those guys. And so what we're going to talk about today is Micheal Clemons could prove to be one of those guys too. So like we said, for decades, the Jets are looking for edge rushers. Well, we went from zero to what feels like forever, right? We're saying, the last time the Jets took an edge rusher high again was Golson, 2008. And then before that, we're going to John Abraham. John Abraham was 2 decades ago. That was 2 decades ago we took that man, and we still talk about him because that was the last time we had a top edge. We didn't even keep him his whole career. He was a Falcon. We know this. So this is huge to draft these guys, to not just, again, bring them in, but draft them to grow the talent. So again, we go from 0 to what feels like forever to 2. 2-in-1 draft. We get Mr. Jermaine Johnson and Mr. Micheal Clemons. And we're going to start with talking about Jermaine Johnson. And as you guys know, as you guys all remember, Jermaine Johnson was one of my favorite edge rushers in this draft. Remember, there were people I was one of them talking about taking him at 4, right? That we needed a top edge. And I said it before, that Jermaine Johnson was the second best edge on my board. I'd recalculated for a while. I always had Hutch up top, right? You guys remember, we talked about how some people had Hutch at 2 and 3 in the beginning. I always had him at 1. Some people had guys like Karloffus high. I always had him low. JJ really impressed me. That kid really impressed me because, as you guys remember, when I did my eval, right, we talked about how, excuse me, we talked about how Hutch was more of a power brusher, more of a physical guy, more of a dominating physical attacker, while DeBow was, remember, nonstop motor all over the place. Well, remember, I told you JJ was both. Right, JJ was the guy that just impressed the hell out of me. Like this kid, I've seen JJ, as I've mentioned to you guys before, literally blow through offensive tackles, and good offensive tackles at that. I'm blanking on the name right now, but an offensive tackle you guys can remember that went high in the last draft, literally blew through him, blows through offensive tackles all the time, yet has spin moves, yet has finesse moves. I've seen him double spin to get in backfields and hit running backs in the backfield. I've mentioned before that I thought as a run blocker, as specifically a run blocker and stopping the running game, I thought Jermaine Johnson was actually the best run-stopping edge in this last draft. So, man, getting Jermaine Johnson, again, one of my favorite edge rushers. Well, again, we talked about, take him at 4, right? We said, you got to take this kid at 4. We can't pass on this kid. We can't miss him. We talked about taking him at 10. Well, somehow, right, in some magical universe, we get Sauce Gardner, we get Garrett Wilson, and then we get Jermaine Johnson at 26. You guys remember, at that point, I was pretty much dead. At that point, I was close to flatlining. Like, I was ready. My fiance I was telling her to get the paddles ready. But I appreciate you guys tuning in. Appreciate you guys being here. Hope you're enjoying, me talking about them Jets. But, we get him at 26, top 10 prospect. A top 10 prospect. We got it 26 overall. Again, second best edge on my board. Best run-stopping edge, in my opinion, in this draft. Best all-around edge. He's dominant. He's excellent. We're going to show how dominant he was. But first, let's talk about the Jets trading up for him, because that was a big deal. It was a big deal for us, but it was also a big deal for him. What he said, and this direct quote from him, to hear the Jets were trying to trade for me since pick 15 all the way to 26 means the world to me. It makes it that much easier to have me give everything I can to this organization. And if you listen to this kid talk, it's always about, I've climbed the mountain, I got to climb the next one. It's always about the next challenge. It's always about what he's going to do next, not what he's accomplished now. There's no point. You don't rest yet. You don't rest on your laurels yet because there's nothing to rest on. And he gets that. Excuse me. So he's ready to give everything he can. And look at what he's given, right? In 2021, Jermaine Johnson had 70 tackles at FSU, 11 and a half sacks. And we're gonna come back to that. We're at that 11 and a half sacks, 17 and a half TFLs, 2 PDs, right? 2 forced fumbles, 1 fumble recovery, and a defensive touchdown. He had a defensive touchdown on the year. Again, 70 tackles, double-digit sacks, 17 and a half TFL. It was dominant. Absolutely dominant for an 81.1 PFF grade. But that grade is absolutely huge, and I want to share this fact with you guys, for a minute. So talking about that grade for a second, that 81.1 PFF grade was the highest of any ACC edge rusher last year. Any ACC edge rusher, and it was the highest of any FSU edge rusher since 2018. And we know they produce good edge rushers. So hope you guys are enjoying the view. Hope you're enjoying the ferry. Hope we're talking about the Jets. Bring any comments, anything you want to, bring up and talk about. Excuse me. But man, he's a dominant player. He's an absolutely dominant edge rusher, right? He's consistently been a dominant edge rusher at last season, and that was his first year at FSU, and that's what we're talking about here. His first year at FSU, transferring there, has this 81.1 PFF grade, again, highest of any ACC player. Number he puts up, dominant, absolutely dominant. Again, a guy I really wanted. We got him, right? We got our edge. But then we get Micheal Clemons later on. And I remember hearing a lot about this kid. I remember hearing a lot about how talented and how high a prospect he could have been but there were what they called red flags. So we draft this kid, and I know a little bit about him. I want to go back, I dig further, right? And we hear all the reports coming out, all the reports on Micheal Clemons, everything we're hearing. And Micheal Clemons, man, from what I've seen, and we've seen it as well, Micheal Clemons is an absolute beast. You watch this kid play, and again, I go back, I watched the film of this kid. He's a monster. You guys don't believe, go look, just literally at the picture that I put on, this podcast, right? Go back to the picture before, or any picture you see of him and Jermaine next to each other. Jermaine's a big dude, but man, Clemens towers over him, and his arms are insane. Like I literally, my apologies, guys. I think the view cut out for a second. I get absolutely excited, dominant, for him. But when you go back at the film and you look at Micheal Clemons, man, he's just a freaking beast. This dude looks like a grown man playing with boys. That's what he looks like when you watch his film from college. He looks like a grown man playing with boys. He's super big. He's super shredded. He literally manhandles people. Again, we saw people were joking around. He should be an offensive lineman, right? Arms. He's huge, right? The dude is going to manhandle offensive linemen and could become a dominant edge rusher at the next level. So you look at all that, and again, put up good numbers. I don't have his numbers exactly in front of me. I believe he had like 7 and change sacks, I believe, good amount of TFLs, had a quality year at A&M. But as we talked about, could have been a high prospect. Well, he wasn't a high prospect because of off the field issues, right? Off the field issues that we'd heard about had him drafted in the fourth, where we got him, but his talent level was a second. Many said that if he had no off-field issues, his talent level was a second-round pick. And you never know. Again, you look at this film, the kid's a beast. The kid is just a freaking beast. He physically imposes his will and dominates everybody. He's just so strong. And we're going to talk about his nasty streak. Just, it is exciting. And again, we talk about Jermaine being a top prospect, being one of the top 10 prospects in the draft. Man, Micheal Clemons, again, we take these off-field issues, talk about them in a minute. He's a top prospect. He really is. They were pretty bad, right? We heard about the off-field issues, and that's what scared a lot of people at first. I looked them up, and some of the charges, remember, include unlawful carrying of a weapon, failure to identify or give false information, had marijuana on him, and also had an invalid driver's license. That's not good. But as we know, Joe Douglas issues, but Joe's not stupid. Remember, I told you guys back in 2020, loved his draft, right? Loved what he did. Felt like he was a great GM well before everyone realized it. Like this guy, the trades he does, the things he does. I didn't think he was going to get duped like that. See, he spoke about that right after they drafted him, and he said that he met with Micheal Clemons, that it wasn't an issue. That Let me correct that. Let me rephrase that. That it wasn't his mistakes. He learned, what this Big Mike is one of the nastiest players in the entire draft. The toughness he brings, we don't think you can have enough of that, right? And it is his toughness, again, his nastiness. Joe Douglas referred to his nastiness, mentions it here. Big Mike's one of the nastiest players in this entire draft. Look at what Robert Saleh said. All I love which he does it. And that again just echoes back to what Joe Douglas said, right? This kid, it's like a different level, right? Different level when he put strong. He's so much stronger than everybody else, especially in his shoulders and his arms and his upper body. So he can just manhandle people. But this too, like Sal says, he puts on his helmet. Man, he dials in. He goes to a dark place, and you see it with the violence and the effort he brings. And who better to echo it than Mr. Micheal Clemons himself, right? My mentality on the field is I'm going to give everything I have. Every play, I'm going to be as fast as I can, as violent as I can, as mean as I can. And that's it, right? That's exactly the point. Again, he man offensive lineman, and we talked about why Jermaine Johnson should have been, we could have taken him at 4. We hadn't drafted top prospect edge rushers in a long time. Now we have two, right? We have two in Jermaine Johnson and Micheal Clemons. And maybe only one of them will pan out. But maybe they both do. Maybe they both, and they're both so different, right? Jermaine Johnson, like we said, good run stopper, good everything, just all around everything you want in edge rusher. Clemons has to work on a lot of things, but one thing he doesn't have to work on nastiness, like we talked. Like you said, he puts that helmet on. He goes to a dark place, and you don't stop him from getting to point B. It just doesn't happen. Again, watch film of this kid. He man handles gigantic human being like they are freaking dolls. It's crazy. So I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast because with me, it's exciting for me. Hope you're enjoying this. But again, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here. Hope you have a great rest of your day.